So what I'm going to reveal in this episode is the world's greatest deception. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you the bit behind the scenes about what they've actually done to us and how their deception actually works. And this might be a bit mind-blowing for a lot of people. But we'll start off with a very, very basic concept to see if people actually understand this. So it starts off with number one. This is very, very simple.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Podghost Podcast with me, Yazz. Once again, as you can see, Seff's taking a bit too much time out. But on the show today, we're welcoming back one of the most popular guests that I normally bring on now. It's becoming a regular thing, Sir Toshi. Welcome to the show.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me back.
Tosh, third time you're with us again.
Third time lucky.
You know what, Tosh? I want to say something before we start the podcast. And it is the feedback that we get from your podcast. It's been absolutely amazing. You know, people have messaged us, and that's why you keep coming back on, because the way you describe things, the way you're getting through to people, I believe people are really enjoying it, as the views and you've seen the likes and the views yourself. And I want to go straight into it now. So, there's no time for you to rehearse, which you never need to do. I want to speak to you today about deception, because we've been leading up to this. I feel like in the first episode, we were speaking about the whole conspiracy with the Bitcoin, and then we moved on to the whole world events and stuff that's been linked. And today, without you even knowing, I want you to speak about deception. So there we have it. I want to ask you straight away, what is deception to you, and how do you feel that all this that goes on today is all linked with the word deception?
Yeah, that's a really good topic to start on. So what I'm going to reveal in this episode is the world's greatest deception. Literally. So we did the first episode, it was on Bitcoin and the deception that they've perpetrated on us there. The second episode was all about the events that they've done to build up to this greatest deception. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you the bit behind the scenes about what they've actually done to us and how their deception actually works. And this might be a bit mind-blowing for a lot of people. But we'll start off with a very, very basic concept to see if people actually understand this. So it starts off with number one. This is very, very simple. If it's not voluntary, it is tyranny. It's as simple as that. If you feel as though you are compelled to do something, if you feel as though you're being forced to do something that you don't want to do, then that is tyranny. And we should be living in a free world. And we are free men and women. So what do you think you're actually doing when you're doing something that you feel as though you're compelled to do, or if you're doing something that you're being forced to do or coerced to do? That is the world's greatest deception. So the first thing you need to say to yourself, whenever you are doing anything, am I doing this voluntarily? Because if you're not doing it voluntarily, then it's tyranny. And if you're feeling compelled or forced to do it, then how do you know you're not being deceived into doing something? Because you are free. Nobody has the right to coerce you or force you to do anything. So why are you doing anything if you're not voluntarily doing it? So that's the first thing. Now, a lot of people feel as though they're forced to pay tax, for example. But yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute, because that's another rabbit hole. But that's the first thing. You've got to ask yourself, am I doing this voluntarily, or is there tyranny being inflicted on me through a form of deception? Is that what's really going on? The second thing you need to ask yourself, when somebody maybe accuses you of doing something, is there a victim? Because if there is no victim, there can be no crime. So if somebody accuses you of doing something, if a copper comes up to you and says, oh, you've done this, you've run a red light, you've been speeding. Okay, is there a victim? Because if there's no victim, there's no crime. And if there's no crime, I haven't done anything wrong. So what's your issue with me? Are you trying to contract with me? What is it you're trying to do? So that's the second thing. Is there a victim? If there's no victim, there's no crime. Then, if there is no contract, there is no obligation. So these are the three things that you need to ask yourself. Am I doing this voluntarily? Is there a victim? Is there a contract? If those questions are answered, and it's like, right, I'm not doing this voluntarily, there is no victim, there is no contract, then I don't have to do this. So it's being forced on you through deception because you don't know the deception that they are forcing upon you. That's why it's deception. Like this is literally what the devil does. And this is what so many people don't get. They feel as though something is wrong, but they don't do anything about it because they don't think about it. And the reason they don't think about it is because they don't know the basics. And those three things are the basics. Is this voluntarily? Is there a victim? Is there a contract?
Damn.
And nobody realizes this. But like I said, a lot of people just simply go with the flow because they think, oh, that's just the easy way out. But let me tell you something about this. You cannot comply your way out of tyranny. That's it.
Period.
Yeah, period. You cannot comply your way out of tyranny. So if somebody is deceiving you into doing something that you don't want to do, that you don't feel is voluntary, and there's no contract involved. So let's take entrepreneurs, for example.
Yep.
Entrepreneurs know that in order to have a successful business, you either have to increase your profit margins or somehow reduce your overheads, which are your costs. And the way you reduce your costs is by making sure that payments are not going out. So as an entrepreneur, like, what are you paying something that you don't want to pay? Because the bills of exchange or the Act of Settlement 1700 specifically says a bill must have an invoice with it, because an invoice tells you what you are paying for. If you have a bill that comes through your door that doesn't have an invoice with it, well, that's a demand for payment. That is what mafia use to extract like funds from you when you don't really want to give them. What am I actually paying for? So literally, a demand for payment is a breach of the peace because somebody has sent you something to your private home, to you personally, demanding payment. Well, for what? So again, this is what like the likes of council tax is. They will never send you an invoice with their demand for payment, because if they sent you an invoice, you would realize that you're now paying a private limited company. And tax is meant to go into a public purse, but right now it's going into private pockets. But nobody knows this because it's a deception. Everybody knows they don't like paying tax, but it's just like, well, what is tax? And yeah, let's go on to talking about money right now. This is like a big, deep topic, but we'll just touch on it now and then we'll go into some questions.
No, go for it, man. Go for it. I'm listening.
So what is the difference between money and currency? As I said in the first podcast, yeah. Currency is a circulating security and money is a monopoly commodity.
Yep.
So what are we using at the moment with these promissory notes? Well, let me tell you something about this. A promise is not a contract. A promise, therefore, can't be enforced. A promise, therefore, has no value, which therefore means you can't securitize a promise, which means a promissory note is complete fraud. It's a bit like paying somebody in lucky notes or opportunity notes or chance notes. Oh, you owe me these promissory notes. Well, why do I owe you these promissory notes when they're literally, you can't securitize a promise and a bank can print these promissory notes from nothing, which means if they're in bed with the government, they can print however much of these promissory notes as they like. Why do I need to pay tax?
Bloody hell.
It's a deep rabbit hole, mate.
So what about because we're speaking about the whole things about taxes and stuff like that. Does the same rule apply for speeding tickets and speeding fines and stuff like that?
Okay, yeah. So there is a law in the Bill of Rights, which is a superior statute, and it defines literally our Constitution. And it specifically says there are to be no fines or forfeitures without conviction from a jury of peers. And being convicted by a jury of peers means that you have to have due process of law. Now, that means that nobody has the right to impose a fine or a forfeiture on you without you being through the without having had due process and being found guilty by a jury of your peers. So if somebody is trying to fine you, well, is there a contract? Do I owe you this? What gives you the right to think that you can just place a fine on me? Well, you can't, because that's tyranny. There's no contract there. There's no obligation.
So you don't need to pay a speeding fine.
No, I don't owe you fuck all. And that decision was upheld by the UK Supreme Court in 2002 in what they called the Metric Martyrs case. So when England sort of entered Europe, there were some shopkeepers in Sunderland that refused to change the measurements of the items in their shop window, because we use stones or pounds, and when we joined the metric system, they were just like, oh, you've got to list everything in kilograms, and they were just like, no, we don't have to do that at all. And the council tried to fine these shopkeepers for not using the metric system, and they were just like, you can't fine us for just simply not listing our items in the window, like in non-European measurements. This is absolutely ridiculous. And the UK Supreme Court specifically upheld that line in the Bill of Rights that says there are to be no fines or forfeitures without conviction from a jury of peers. Now that means that if somebody tries to issue you a fine or a forfeiture without due process, without you being convicted by a jury of your peers, that is contempt of court, and that is 5 years in prison. And that is not being upheld right now. It's outrageous, mate.
So for an example, for people that are probably thinking what I'm thinking, you get a speeding ticket, you don't pay it. You get a court letter, or you get, and it can go further onto, bailiffs and stuff. But let's just stick to the fact that they take you to court. If what you're saying is true, why do we need to go to court?
You don't. But this is it. We are up against a mafia. And this is what people don't get. People think that we're living in this free society right now. Yeah. It's all deception. And this is what happens when people like me suddenly start explaining to people, and the penny starts to drop. And this is, again, what the powers that be don't want people to know. They don't want people to start thinking, hold on a minute, what's going on here? Why do I have to do this? Why am I suddenly paying this? What's a promissory note? They don't want people using their brains. This is why they're making people so thick. This is why they're completely changing the narrative. Because, 2025, up is down, left is right. We've got chicks with dicks, men can get pregnant, all this fucking bullshit. It's all a distraction because they don't want people using their brains to actually think about what's really going on. Hold on a minute. There's somebody sending me a demand for payment. Why do I have to pay you? Where's my obligation? But because they know that if they went to court on this, that they would never, ever win because of there would be contempt of court, what they do is they just simply go straight to the bailiffs. So you suddenly don't pay a fine, suddenly you get a knock on a door from a bailiff. Well, that's a breach of the peace. They've got no right to come knocking on your door. And also, they're a third-party interloper. What right have they got to come round? And the reason a lot of them won't even show their names and all that is because if they just come round and knock on your door from out of the blue and you've done nothing wrong, you've caused no harm, injury or loss, there's been no victim, there's been no crime, there's no contract obligation. Suddenly a guy comes around knocking on your door asking for payment, a third-party interloper that's got nothing to do with the event that took place anyway. That is breaching the peace. You should be calling the police on them. But this is the world we're living in right now because people don't know what's going on. They can't believe this. They don't know how corrupt the system is. But just going on from that a little bit, this is what will really, really blow people's minds.
Go for it.
So, in 1666, we had the Great Fire of London, which was I think it was in the month of September.
Yep.
And later on, because of that event, they created the CS2KV Act of 1666. And what this CS2KV Act did was they said that if you do not assert yourself as living after 7 years, you are considered lost at sea and a dead entity, and therefore you have no rights whatsoever. So the question is, when does this 7-year time frame start? So this is what people need to know. There is a massive difference between a certificate of live birth and a birth certificate. Now, a certificate of live birth is just something that is created when you are born because it proves that you are living. Now, when you are alive and you were born, God granted you dominion over everything. Nobody has any power over you. So they were just like, right, how can we deceive people into thinking that we do have power over them? So what they do is they created the birth certificate. Now, they do not create the birth certificate. What they do is they get your parents to register you. And again, they can't force you to do this. They'll coerce your parents into doing it. But then you've got to say to yourself, hold on a minute, what is this birth certificate? Why am I registering it? They don't want you to know this. So what happens is you have your certificate of live birth, but then they're just like, right, well, we need your consent from your parents to make a corporate fiction of this living individual. And we're going to do that with a birth certificate. And the reason they call it a birth rather than born is because ships are birthed. It's all about maritime contracts from now on, being lost at sea. Now, what happens is when this birth certificate is created, they float that on the stock market, and that immediately takes on the estimated value of your tax revenue that you will bring in your entire lifetime. So your birth certificate takes on the value of millions immediately, the moment it's created. And the reason they do that is because initially how they operate is that things have to be done with good intentions. So they were just like, why are we doing this? Well, if we can create a corporate entity through a birth certificate that takes on the estimated value of your lifetime's tax revenue, that value can then be used to pay for everything that you need in your life. Literally everything. All your bills, it's all there. It's all paid for. That's why it's called the CS2KV Trust. It is your trust created for your benefit. And then the likes of Fidelity, which is a fund manager, will take deposits from your trust, and they've been investing that for you since you've been born in some of like literally the world's most profitable companies: Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, even like arms manufacturers, airplane manufacturers, whatever. Literally, your CS2KV Trust is worth billions, and it's meant to pay for absolutely everything for you. But because you don't know this, and your parents didn't ask what it was for when they were first registering you, they were just like, "Oh right, well, what we'll do is we'll just keep this for ourselves." And this is what people don't know. So you have a corporate entity that you don't know about. And how do we know that your corporate entity exists? Well, when you receive a letter through the mail,
Yep.
does that letter have the title on it, either Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or something like that?
Yep.
Right. Did your parents give you that title?
No.
So where did that title come from? Because it means something. Everything means something. People are just like, oh, it's just customary to call somebody Mr. or Miss or Mrs.
I get what you mean.
Okay.
Where did that come from? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, now I'm going to tell you. So when your birth certificate is created, that is your trust. And when that is created, you are the master of that trust, which is why from the ages of 0 to 7 years old, your title is master, because you are master of your estate. You are master of your trust. But if you do not claim that trust within 7 years, you are then considered lost at sea and a maritime entity. So what happens is, after 7 years, when you don't claim your trust, which is your estate, the letters of estate spelled ESTATE, and in master that's ASTE. So if you don't claim your trust after 7 years, the letters of estate are removed from your title of master, and you are given the title Maritime, which is MR. It's an abbreviation for maritime. You are now a maritime entity, which means you're lost at sea and you are a dead legal fiction. Now, every time they write to you, they are writing to your dead legal fiction, and you don't know this. And because they're writing to a dead legal fiction, that dead legal fiction can't reply. But the question is, well, if they know it can't reply, why are they writing to it anyway? But this is how screwed up they are. So they're just like, well, if we get a response back from this letter, then a dead entity can't respond. So therefore, it can't be from the dead entity, which means therefore it must be from one of the trustees of the dead entity, and it's the trustees that are liable for all the payments of that trust. So we must be receiving a reply from a trustee who is now liable for this final forfeiture that we're putting on them. Because a corporation cannot contract with a living man or woman, because a corporation is a corpse entity. It's dead. A corporation can't pick up a pen. A corporation can't communicate.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I feel you.
A corporation can't communicate with you. So a corporation can only communicate with another dead entity. And your dead entity is your legal fiction that is worth billions. And what they do is, because they know your trust exists, not only do they claim from your trust, but they also get you to pay because you don't know that your trust exists. This is how big the fraud is, mate. Your trust is worth is billions. And remember the two videos I sent you recently? I think is it Jess Phillips, who was in the Houses of Parliament, saying, "Do you know who pays for the policing? It's the Treasury that pays for it." And he was just like, "Actually, no, it's not. It's paid for by the taxes." Well, she let it slip there. She knows that it's paid for by the Treasury. And Elon Musk recently did an interview where he said, we found some magic money computers in the Treasury Department that just simply make payments from nothing with trillions of dollars. Now, the reason they do that is because they don't want you to know that the Treasury exists. Because the Treasury holds the value of all of your sweat equity for your entire lifetime. And the reason they do that is because when they say, where's all these funds coming from? Yeah. It's not coming from us. Well, if they say it's not coming from us and they can prove it's not coming from us, if you don't know where it's coming from, where else do you turn? Well, everything is paid for by the Treasury, because the Treasury is your CS2KV Trust that has got trillions in there that they just simply use to money launder and fund their entire criminal operation. And this all started back in 1666. And people have no idea. And they're like, surely this can't be right. But the evidence that this exists is the fact that when they write to you, your title is there staring you in the face. So when you get married, they call it tying the knot. That's a ship's knot. Maritime, it's a maritime contract. You have to have a marriage license. You get a marriage certificate. That marriage certificate is floated on the stock market. And again, what they do is they estimate the couple's tax revenue that they'll generate for the entire lifetime of their marriage while it still exists. Honestly, it's absolutely outrageous, mate.
Jeez. You know what? When you say it like that, it makes you question so many other things. Because I remember when you recently sent me a message, you send me quite, often I receive messages from you. And the one that sticks to my mind was about the whole side of paying bills and, all these fines that we think, because we've all, we don't know any better. Let's be honest. I'm speaking for probably everyone that's watching this. We don't really have that sort of knowledge. We just think it's part of the rules of the country. Everyone's going to follow what they've been told. Mm-hmm. But when you say it like that and you break it down like that, it actually does make you start thinking of so many other things.
It makes sense. And suddenly all these other questions that you've got, that's how it works. Okay, well, check this out. Let's talk about use of the mail. So the Royal Mail was specifically set up for living men and women to communicate with each other in the private. The Royal Mail was never ever meant for commerce or designed for commerce. You're never ever meant to put a bill in the mail, because that is sending a request for payment in the mail to somebody's private home. The Royal Mail was never meant for that. So how do they get around this? So there are two types of envelopes. There are white envelopes and there are brown envelopes.
Yep.
Right? So anything that comes in a white envelope is an offer to contract. And the reason it's white is because they have to make sure that the contract is clear. That's why it comes in a white envelope. A brown envelope is when they already feel as though they have a contract with you somehow, like your driving license or something like that. But this is where they apply maritime laws to the Royal Mail. So when you receive a white envelope, if that envelope is a windowed envelope, well, that means the mail is not private, because a third-party interloper has seen in through that window. They can see the contents of that envelope through the window, which means it's tainted mail, so you can just simply send it back. Now, because they use maritime contract, like they say that the devil wants to contract with you. Well, it's actually even probably like more than that. The devil just simply wants to communicate with you, because he will now take acceptance through a maritime agreement, which is either by tacit agreement or by acquiescence. Now, tacit agreement is when the contract is implied, because you've done something that implies that a contract exists. And an acquiescent is when you don't object to it. So they're sort of like going to imply that they want to contract with you, and because you don't object to it, they just simply take it as, oh, okay, right, well, nobody's objected to it, so therefore the offer is accepted. So if you can see that there is a windowed envelope, because you can see in the envelope, you can see the content. So therefore you wouldn't open it if you knew that it wasn't addressed to you. So by you opening the envelope, they've accepted the contract. They were just, oh, well, you've opened the envelope, you can see what is in it. Because if you were to open mail that didn't belong to you, well, that's mail fraud. You could be done for that, for tampering with the mail. The UPS, the United Postal Service, stands above all laws on the land, because all countries have agreed that during war, when you're trying to get the message out, messages are really important. You never ever shoot the messenger. And so the police shouldn't ever touch somebody who works for the Royal Mail. This is why if you're a postmaster, you literally stand above the police, because you're a postmaster. It's really important. All the countries in the world have agreed that you do not attack the mail. Yeah, it's like they say, don't shoot the messenger. So if you're opening mail, they're just like, right, well, that's an offer accepted. But so the windowed envelope means it's tainted mail. If in the top right it's franked, as in like it's printed, there's not a stamp on there, that means that it's commerce, because all they're doing is putting it through machines. That means it's not private mail, because a live individual, a man or woman, has not put a stamp on there. So franked mail is mail fraud. And when you turn the envelope over, there'll be a PO box address.
Yeah.
Right? Well, a PO box address is a non-geographical location, because it's a PO box address. And because it's a non-geographical location, which means you can't track them down and find out where it's coming from, it means that a PO box address is a non-contracting address. So that means that whenever you get a mail through the post that's got a window in it, immediately tainted mail, franked, that's mail fraud, non-contracting address, what you actually need to do, and it will be addressed to your mister, right? They're trying to contract with you. What you should do is you send it back. But because people don't know that that's what they're meant to do, like they'll just open it and go, oh, I've got a fine here. And then you need to know about the four corner rule, for example. Like capital letters means that they are implying they are trying to communicate with your corporate entity. That's why all gravestones are written in capital letters. A capital letter means a dead entity. And anything that's in a box on a page is a coffin. So literally they can say, oh, you owe us this, and if you don't do this, we are going to fine you. And that'll be in a box. Well, that means that on a page it doesn't actually exist. So they can legitimately say, we didn't force you to pay this. We didn't ask you to pay it. Yeah, we're not sending you a demand for payment.
But you just feel like you have to pay it.
Yeah, it's all deception. Everything is deception. And this is what they don't want people to know. But the reason they're able to create this deception is, again, it all comes down to economic power. They have the economic power to create this deception. It's massive, man.
So what do you think let's just say everything you're saying, because for me it makes complete sense, and I'm sure anyone that's watching it, they will actually think, right, that's actually true. Everything that Tosh is saying is actually there's some sort of truth behind it. You can't deny it. I don't just sit here and agree with you. If there's something that I didn't agree with you, you know me well enough, I'd say, no, Tosh, I don't believe in that. But everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I want to ask, the follow-up question would be, for me, what do you think the end goal is? Like all this deception, all this, creating all this false sort of ruling. And I feel like all of us, we're being taught something completely off the radar. We don't know what's going on. We're just being taught like a system. For example, from the moment we're taught in schools till now. And I always believe from being young and growing up, the curriculum plays a big part in that. Is that something that, according to your logic, is that something that applies for the schooling of the country as well?
Absolutely. So we are being played. We are being played to comply.
Yeah.
We are being deceived into complying without even knowing it. That's why now they're saying, oh, it's an offence to misgender somebody. Oh, sorry, mate. I didn't realise that you're a dude. I didn't realise you're a chick with a dick or anything like that. Because like I said, it says strictly, and this is in one of the founding documents of our Constitution, which was the Magna Carta in 1215. No one has the right to be offended. No one, because an offence, or when you're offended, it's just hurt feelings. Oh, you hurt my feelings. You have absolutely no right to have hurt feelings whatsoever, and nobody can fine or place a forfeiture on you for offending them. Right, but where does this...
So offending someone isn't a crime?
You what's that?
So offending someone, the way they make it now, it turns such a big thing now if you offend someone. Yeah. What you're saying is it's not necessarily something that we should be done for if we offend someone.
Well, if you offend somebody, is there a victim? Have you caused harm, injury or loss on someone? Just because you've offended them?
Not physically, no, but mentally you may have.
Well, prove it. Show me the harm, injury or loss I've caused you by offending you. Prove it. Prove I've offended you. Oh, I'm hurt. Fuck off. Honestly. So, and where does it stop? Where does it stop? Are you going to get offended now because I want to have sex with you and you said no? Oh, I want to have sex with an underage girl, and she rejected me and I'm offended by that. Where does it stop? It's absolute lunacy. So, you misgendered me and now I'm offended. And now we're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah, you know what? Obviously, the whole stuff that, you're saying about the whole gender stuff and, anyone that believes whatever they want to believe, I believe everyone's got to, believe what they want. Everyone can, have a view. But I do believe sometimes the things we see are just taking the piss. And that I'm sure everyone that's watching, in fact, I'm 100% certain, there's so many people now play on that. These videos are going viral at the moment where police are stopping someone and the guy refused to talk and he's saying, I'm a dog. He starts barking back. And I just fucking find that crazy, weird, wacky, every word you want to put on that. And whether you are someone that believes in, freedom and, we can be what we want, fair play. Sexuality wise, everyone can do whatever they want. But when it comes to this stuff, I do feel a lot of people are playing on it. And it kind of goes exactly hand in hand with what you're saying. It's just deception, really is.
Yeah, well, when a copper comes up to you and says, oh, you've committed an offence. Oh, really? Who's the victim? There is no victim. All right. Do I have a contract with somebody? Am I obliged? No, but you've committed an offence. Well, who? So it's like this. Who is the claimant? Who is making the claim that you've offended someone?
Yeah.
When you turn up to court, if there is no claimant, there is no claim. And now what they're trying to do with this single justice procedure is just simply you turn up, are you guilty or not guilty? Well, hold on a minute. We're meant to have a trial. There's meant to be a jury of peers over there. Like, who are you to ask me if I'm guilty or not guilty? Of what? Who's the victim? What am I guilty of? So this is what we're being deceived into complying with their bullshit. until eventually we literally live in our own prisons and we don't even realize it. And we're so fucked that it's like, oh right, by the way, get ready for your booster, get ready for your vaccine. It's really good for you. It's got all the vitamins and minerals in there for you. That's where it's leading, mate. They're gonna wipe us the fuck out if people don't wake up.
Sorry, I just kind of lost my head ball there. You know what, Tosh? I always think that there's always an end goal. I know we refer to them as they, and people that are watching have their own views. And I'm sure everyone kind of knows, but I feel like not everyone's going to come out of it, whether you're the biggest celebrity or whether you're someone who's just learning, their way in life. There's so many questions that we have in the back of our mind. For an example, one of the things that have always, affected me is the law of driving, for an example. They give you a point system, 3 points, 6 points, 9 points for literally cutting a red light. It's literally, they won't look at even speeding fines. Sometimes they go so deep with it. Some people, they get 6 points for being a couple of miles an hour over. Similarly, when it comes down to the government's whole system on prison, prison sentences where people are getting, sentenced for literally doing nothing, while people that are committing the biggest crimes are getting half of the sentence they should be getting. And I feel like generally that is also exactly what you're saying. It's deception, because we've got so many questions that we ask, why is the law like this and why is the law like that? And people take it to offense when they say, in the Middle East, there's Sharia law.
Hold on a minute. Let's just go back and deal with that first bit.
Yeah.
So driving. You said the term driving.
Yeah. I'm just speaking
if you look up the term driving in the dictionary, driving is a maritime definition. So we do not drive on the roads. What we do is we travel on the roads in our own private conveyance. So a vehicle is a maritime definition. Driving is a maritime definition.
Yep.
So when a copper comes up to you and says, "Are you the driver?" and you go, "Oh yeah, I'm the driver." Well,
Yeah.
You're not, because you're not in a ship. You're in a car. And that car is your own private conveyance. And when you look in your passport, you will see that nobody has the right to stop you from traveling. That's why they always say, "Are you the driver?" No, I'm actually the traveller. Is this your vehicle? No, it's my own private conveyance. And I'm travelling in my own private conveyance, and nobody's got the right to stop me. So what do you think you're doing?
Is that how you would respond to policeman?
Well, obviously I don't. That's how you should respond if we weren't living in such a corrupt society.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
but that's what should be going on. The copper has got no right to stop you. Oh, I believe you've committed an offence. Fucking do one. But literally, like you've got a driving license. So check this out. So let's say somebody gets caught driving without a license, and they're like, "Oh, that's an offence." Well, let me tell you this. You cannot license a crime. You can't license a crime, because a crime is a crime. You can't have a crime and then say, "Oh, because I'm licensed, it's all right to do it." No, a crime is a crime. They go, "Oh, it's a crime to drive without a license." Well, hold on a minute. So is driving a crime? Right, so therefore I don't need a license to drive, because driving is not a crime. Yeah? But people just don't think of this, because they're too busy thinking about offending a chick with a dick. And they don't know the deception that's being brought on them, because the majority of people out there are rational human beings. They're just like, why would anybody do this? Like, when I try and explain this to people, the first question is, why would they do that? Why would they do that? They have no idea why they're doing it, because they don't understand religious extremism. And they don't understand, like, literally why the motivation comes from this. Like I said, the book of Samuel, 3,000 years ago. They are purposely building this deception around us so that we end up as prisoners in our own prisons, and we don't even know it. Until one day, they sort of take off the velvet glove, and there's the iron fist, and you're right, you're not coming out. You're not coming out until you've had your vitamin A, B, C, D, E, F, G injection. There you go, mate. Nice one. That's where it's headed, mate. And let me tell you, like literally, they own absolutely all the resources of the planet because they've deceived people into handing it over. The only way we get out of this is when we get out of their financial system. Because like I said before, all legal and political influence stem from economic power. And if we're using the Bitcoin network, they have no financial coercion over us. And also, all of their crimes, all of their deceptions can now be recorded on the Bitcoin network where it can't be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, which means they can't deny it, which means they can't get away with it. That's what this lot do. They delete evidence. They want all the evidence digitally recorded on their own servers that they can then manipulate and delete it when it suits them. That's the only way out of this thing, mate.
So Bitcoin will be the only reason how this will all change.
Yeah. Everything has to be recorded on the Bitcoin ledger. And the only way you can record things on the Bitcoin ledger is when you upload the recording or the digital content with a micro payment in Bitcoin. So you buy Bitcoin to use the ledger. And when you've got the evidence on the Bitcoin network, it's there forever. They can't deny it. They can't get away with it. Literally, it will, like, if they've broken the law, if they've broken the Constitution, if they've tried to impose a fine on you, if they've told you you've committed an offence of some sort, that will be there forever and it will come back and bite them, provided we win this. And part of the war that we're in is why I'm here talking to you.
It's mad because it goes back to the first episode we did when it all started off with the power of Bitcoin and, you know, the number of transactions and how powerful it really is. And this is exactly, so what you're saying is all this, well, not you're saying, but what I believe in as well, is that this whole system that we've been told, we all understand there's so many things that don't make sense, but really it's just diverting us away from the truth.
It's deception.
And that is deception. Yeah, it's mad how you've just linked it all up, and Bitcoin will always be the only way moving forward, really.
Well, it's Bitcoin moving forward, but also people knowing the law, knowing the Constitution, knowing that they are trying to contract with your corporate fiction you don't know about. Like if somebody says to me, oh, well, you Mr. So-and-so, I get extremely offended by that. But like, do I look like I'm dead to you? Do I look like I'm a maritime entity? So let's talk about your surname. So where does the name surname come from? Well, surname is your surety name. It's your slave name. And it's your slave name that is linked to your maritime title. So maritime title and then identified with your surety name. That's why they always want your title and your last name and your date of birth. So they can then start pilfering from your CS2KV Trust that you don't know about that has got billions of dollars in there. That's why they want your title, your last name and your date of birth. That's why they use it. Because the living name that you are is the name that your mum and dad gave you. And notice I said the name mum and dad is because I don't want to call them parents. And this is why the name parent, again, that title is a maritime contract. So what happens is when you register your boys and girls, your young little boys and girls with a birth certificate, what you're actually doing is registering, you're handing over ownership. So I know people, for example, who when they found out about this deception, they rage. They're just like, this is so unfair. This is so corrupt. And when people find corruption, they often start trying to fight it, but they don't understand how the size of the bear that they start poking. Because they're just like, hold on a minute, this is new. I've never heard of this before. Let me tell you, I know a young lady with 3 young boys and girls started fighting the system. And when she started making headway and making noise, she had a knock on her door, child services. They took all of her kids away, all of them. And the next day, they returned the youngest one and they said, that's not ours. Because she didn't register the youngest one when he was born. But because she'd registered the first 2, they felt entitled to take them. She's registered with them. That's ours. They literally took her kids away.
Wow.
Seriously, people have no idea how bad it is.
So...
And hold on, let me just tell you about the name parent.
Bloody hell.
So when you register your children, and children is another name for chattel, which is ownership, The CS2KV Trust is then meant to pay for all of your child's upbringing. Everything. Literally. Clothes, shoes, education, bills, travel. There's literally billions in there. But because you don't know that, and you start paying for your own children, what you're actually doing is renting your children back off the state after you've registered them. Hence you are pair rents. You're a pair, and you're renting your children back off the state when they're actually already paid for by their CS2KV Trust. It's deep, mate. It's really deep. And it's desperate because people have no idea.
I want to go back to that whole thing about what you just said about they brought the child back to the mother and said he's not ours.
No.
So would you recommend or would you say yourself that you should have registered your children?
Well, why do you need to register your children with anything? They already have a certificate of live birth. But this is it. They've built this massive system.
It's a bit hard for me to fathom it right now, but I get what you mean. Yeah,
it's a system that they've built that they own and control you within. And they're saying, well, you should register your child with us because these are all the benefits that you'll receive. But what they're not telling you is when you register your child with them, you're handing over ownership. Literally, if you start poking the bear and you've got anything so for example, with your car, you look on the V5 document, it says you are the registered keeper. Well, what the fuck? I've just bought that car. What do you mean I'm the registered keeper? I fucking own that thing.
It's my car, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you have a speeding fine or a parking ticket and a bailiff's come round, they would just take your car and notice that none of the modern building regulations, they haven't updated garages. So there is no garage that can fit a modern car in there. And the reason they've done that is because they don't want people parking their cars in the garage, because if your car is in the garage, they can't get it. They want your car on your driveway or on the road, where if you don't pay a speeding ticket or a parking fine, they'll just simply come and take it and crush it because they own it. You've registered that vehicle with the DVLA. The DVLA own your car. You're just the registered keeper. You ain't got no rights to it whatsoever. None. And it's the same with your children. Well, little boys and girls. When you register your little boy and your girl with them, it becomes a child and you become a parent because you're renting your child off the state when it's already paid for.
God.
So again, I mean, this is one of the things I want to stress to people. When people hear about this corruption and deception, like it blows their minds. Some people rage and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just saying, there is no point in raging. You have no idea how big this bear is that you might think about trying to poke because it's wrong. It will crush you. Literally, we have nothing. The only thing that will get us out of this is Bitcoin. That's it.
Hence why you're here getting the word out.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. There was a comment I read on one of our previous episodes and someone said, you know what? Yazz is always so shocked. And I don't put this on. Like, I don't listen to you and just keep a straight face because I am, none of this is pre-rehearsed. It's we just literally just came on set and we just start talking because that's why when I hear these things about these parents and kids, I've got kids myself and I'm just thinking of so many things now, like it all makes sense. And it's unbelievable how I've never, ever sat there and thought about it. And I'm sure anyone that's watching this is going to be thinking about the same thing that is going through my mind now. And it all comes down to the fact that we are a part of a system. There is no question. We could sit here for hours, days, weeks, months, talking about so many things that make no fucking sense to us. How they can just put the gas rates up, the electric rates. Nothing makes sense. Let's be honest.
Well, let's talk about that then just quickly as you brought it up.
No, not quickly. We just talk about everything that, that's coming up because it feels like everything I say, you're telling me that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
So fire away.
So think about this. How was the gas and the electricity network first funded? It was funded with taxpayer funds. The gas and electricity infrastructure belonged to us. We paid for it with our taxes, and it's still funded by the taxes. The energy companies, the electricity and the gas companies, what they actually are is credit brokers. because what they're doing is they're asking you to just simply volunteer a payment for them.
Yep.
But in actual fact, all your payments come out from your CS2KV Trust, which they double dip from as well, and they want a payment from you. But again, they don't want a payment from you. They want a payment from your corporate entity. Because they can't take you to court and sue you, because unless you go into court and say, oh, are you Mr. So-and-so? Oh, yes, that's me. Right then, got ya. The reason they do that is because when you accept responsibility for your maritime title, they know that you are ignorant and stupid and you don't know what's going on, and therefore they can get one over on you. This is why they don't want people knowing the knowledge that I'm giving out here. Because, like I said before, when you go into court and they say, place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, that's a sign for Baphomet, which means you've already accepted the deception of the court before you've even sworn your promise to tell the truth. It's so big, mate. It's heartbreaking and it's desperate. And let me tell you what else happened. So, everything happened in 1971. We've got the Nixon shock, which removed the US dollar from the gold standard.
Yep.
That was the world reserve currency. You also had document FCO, which stands for Foreign Commonwealth Office, 30/1048, that was drafted on the 29th of April 1971. That outlined how sovereignty would be surrendered, the monarch deposed, and high treason committed when Britain joined the European Economic Community on the 1st of January 1973. And the moment we joined the European Union and we surrendered our sovereignty, which is high treason because the monarch has no right to surrender our sovereignty at all. Our sovereignty is entrusted to him through the crown and in trust, and that trust has to be perpetuated as it's just simply passed on in the same condition as it was when it was given to him. They've got absolutely no right to surrender even an atom of sovereignty. So that means that any act, legislation, or a statute that they've tried to enforce post 1st of January 1973 is continuing the deposition of the monarch and continuing the treason and the surrender of sovereignty, which means it's null and void. So everything that they've tried to enforce post 1st of January 1973 is completely void because it's continuing the perpetuating the continued deposition of the monarch, which is high treason.
My God. You know what,
Told you this
Tosh?
would blow your mind.
I wasn't prepared for this, mate. And, it's getting late.
Yeah.
And we are going to be doing this on a regular basis now because I believe we're onto something. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers are actually taking to you now as well. So there you have it, guys. That was another fantastic chat with Satoshi. If you liked what you saw, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And me and Tosh will be back real soon with episode 4 and onwards. So there you have it. Please do let us know your feelings in the comments below. And until next time, peace, love, and respect.